everyone, welcome to another Adelaide Zoo Facebook Live. My name's Jodie and I am the senior primate keeper here at the zoo, and one of my main joys in life is working with the orangutans, and that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today. So over my shoulder just here is our fabulous male orangutan. His name is Cluet. So you can see him just chilling out there with his blankie and in the grass, just getting a few of his lunchtime bits and pieces. So it's really lovely to see Cluey out and about. Cluet is 24 years old, and so while that might sound pretty old, orangutans can live into their 50s and 60s, so that's pretty exciting. Male orangutans often, even being in a setting where they've got all this good food and lots of health care from our wonderful vets, they can live even longer, which is really wonderful. Cluet actually weighs around 102 kilos, so that's pretty big, certainly a lot bigger than me, even though he's not as tall as I am. So orangutans, males especially, they can get really big. So in the wild, 90 to 100 kilos is really just that perfect ideal body condition for them. Believe it or not though, orangutan females are often only half that size. So there's a really big size discrepancy between male and female orangutans. So it's a bit hard to see with Cluet laying down, but it's really big and bulky, and they've got that gorgeous orange hair, which you can see. And with the Sumatran orangutans, which is what Cluet is, the males often develop these big, beautiful dreadlocks. So you can kind of make them out as Cluet is there at the moment getting some of that food. So we do have two orangutans here at the zoo. We've got Cluet, as you can see, and our female Puspa live in groups. Orangutans are actually semi-solitary. So we often get lots of questions around why Cluet and Puspa are often on their own here in the exhibit, and that's by choice. So here at Adelaide Zoo, we actually let the orangutans do the deciding as to how they want to hang out and have their day go. So often Puspa makes the choice. She's very much individual. She likes to do her own thing, and she takes the day on her own, and we often just go with what they want. So it's very much about the orangutans making the decisions and having the choice and control about how their day fares, and of course we in my eyes. So at the zoo here, this Facebook Live, we're going to have lots of hopefully questions from you guys. So if anyone wants to start sending through some of those questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. But a little bit more on orangutans just really quickly before we get into the questions. Orangutans are actually critically endangered. So most people know of the Sumatran orangutan and the Bornean orangutan. Both of those species are critically endangered. Not a lot of people are aware there's actually a third species of orangutans now. So just about 2 years ago, a third species, which is the Tapanuli orangutan, was discovered in Sumatra, also critically endangered. All three of these species are Tapanuli orangutan. There's only about 800 of them left. So it's really important that no matter what you're doing, try and buy things that are as sustainable as possible, whether that be everyday items from the supermarket, or even more broadly than that. The more often we can think about our sustainability and the choices that we make on a day-to-day basis, that's the type of thing that's going to, it's really important to think about those choices. Even now, at this crazy time in the world, if we can think sustainably, that's what's going to help out these beautiful animals. So let's open it up. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like me to answer about Cluet, Puspa, orangutans in general? Fire away.
Bianca has asked, what do they like to eat?
So it really depends. As you may have guessed before, Cluet and Puspa very much individual in their choices. So Cluet has a bit of a sweet tooth. He does enjoy all sorts of fruits, especially things that are just coming into season, so he might not have had for a while. He tends to be a big mango fan in mango season, loves all sorts of things like that. In the wild though, most of their diet is made up of fruit, so about 60% or more. Here at the zoo though, we only give them a very small amount of fruit because us humans, we've cultivated all our fruit to be far more sugary than what it would be in the wild. So to make sure it's nutritionally correct, we give them a small amount of fruit, then lots of leafy greens and vegetables to make sure that they're getting a really balanced diet. Puspa though, she prefers things like celery, she loves boiled potatoes, she loves a nice ripe tomato, so she's very much got that health thing going on, where Cluet, he loves a little bit of sweet.
Speaking of diet and how they can eat, Jensen, who is 4, has asked if they have sharp teeth.
Oh, good question. So orangutans' teeth pretty much look like ours. They've got the same amount of teeth, very, very similar structure, except for the fact that their canine teeth get much bigger than ours. And so in a male orangutan, we're talking like this big, like a good inch or more. So that tooth, while it's not sharp and jagged like some animals that might be eating meat or things like that, it's very much the same as ours, just much, much bigger. The females, their teeth just look sort of like our teeth. Their canines are a little bit bigger, but not as much as a male orangutan.
Someone's asked, how often do they walk on just their back feet? They said that they saw it once and found it amazing.
Yes, well, again, normally you would say not very often. Their balance isn't great when they're just walking around on their upright on their 2 legs. The caveat with that is Puspa. Puspa, our female orangutan, loves to walk around on 2 legs. Her balance is amazing. She's often more comfortable walking upright, and who knows where she learnt that. She certainly wasn't taught that as a behaviour. It's just something that she's done since she was little, and she feels very comfortable with that. And if you've ever visited the zoo, you've most likely seen Puspa walking around upright, and you can see she's perfectly comfortable doing so. So I would say most orangutans pretty much doesn't happen all that often. Puspa, all the time.
Someone's asked just say a person got into the enclosure, how do you think the orangutan would react?
That's a really hard one to know. We have to, obviously we prepare for the fact that we would want the orangutans to get in and away from the person as quickly as possible, because orangutan, especially a male like Cluet, they're about 10 times as strong as a human male. So the possibility of it, something bad happening is quite high. When you're talking about an animal that big and that strong, with those big teeth that I was just talking about, they might not want to hurt the person, but if they felt that they were being threatened, or they didn't understand what was happening, the possibility is just way too high. So whether they would react in a threatened manner, we don't know, but we would hope that we would never have to find out the answer to that. And part of what we do here at the zoo is we make sure that we work on things like recall training, so that in an emergency, whatever that emergency was, we could get the orangutans back as quickly as we needed to, and that they would be rewarded for doing that. So for them it's lovely and positive, and they know that whatever's happening in the exhibit or around the zoo, they hear that certain whistle, they come straight inside.
Someone's asked, what does their hair feel like?
Their hair actually feels quite coarse. So the thing that I probably liken it to most is a horse's tail. So if you've ever felt a horse's tail, it's quite coarse, and I would say that's probably the most similar thing that I can say that an orangutan feels like.
Audrey, who's 8, has asked, what are those big grey things around their face?
Good question. I didn't mention them. The male orangutans develop big cheek pads. So when they reach sexual maturity, which can vary anywhere between sort of 13 to into their 20s, the males start to get really big, and as a characteristic which helps show the other orangutans that they are now adult, they develop those big cheek pads. The female orangutans never develop them. It's just something that the boys get. And the scientists, they might be a few different reasons why they develop those. Certainly the female orangutans think that they're pretty beautiful, so that the males with the lovely big cheek pads often get the more of the girls come visiting. It also probably shows the other male orangutans who is looking big and healthy and maybe dominant in that area. And there's also another theory that maybe it's a little bit like when they call out during the forest, it's a bit like us cupping our hands around our mouth so we can help the direction of the noise. And orangutan males do lovely big long calls which help attract females and ward off other males. Maybe it's something to do with that as well. But there's a few different theories, but that's what they are. They're called.
Someone has asked, do they have multiple partners?
So they can have multiple partners. So what happens is they tend to have home ranges, and unlike some animals that have really fixed territories, orangutans are very fluid. So if you can imagine, if there's a male in this area and a male in this area, if this one's the dominant male, if he's moving in this direction, this may through the forest in that kind of fashion. Home range, and within that home range, he might have 4 or 5 females within that area. So during that time period, while a particular adult male is the most dominant of that area, he might have the opportunity to mate and father with a few different females, but because female orangutans only have a baby every 7 to 9 years, it's not something that gets to happen very often, and there's usually quite a long time period where a female won't be receptive to falling pregnant. So there's limited opportunity in an orangutan world, which, you know, looping back to why they're so critically endangered, because they do breed so slowly and have babies so infrequently, it means that for every orangutan we lose in the wild, it takes a very long time for that spot to be filled.
Someone would like to know what's their favourite toy or enrichment?
Well, again, they vary so much. Kluit and Puspa are such different personalities. So Kluit loves anything tech. So I often have a giggle. He is 24, it's through and through, he's fabulous with tech. If he can watch a video, especially if it's of himself, he loves it. He loves to use our keeper phones and use our apps to do things like paint and play music. A few years ago, Kluit actually became the first orangutan in the world to release a music single. Puspa is very tactile. She loves to paint, so she likes to paint with good old traditional paint and canvas and paintbrush. Often more paint ends up on the walls and the floor, which we just love. And she loves to do things, she likes to tidy. Puspa is very, very organised. She has a spot for everything, and if we happen to move it, she goes straight back in and fixes up where everything is. So it really just, they're so individual. So we often try and cater to what their favourite things are and what their favourite things to do are, so that we can make sure that each individual orangutan is cared for and enriched as best as we possibly can.
Speaking of enrichment, a couple of people are wondering...
A little bit of a hard question to say, and I think individual personalities. This big, tough-looking guy, he's really quite... At times, Kluit can spend a lot of time resting where visitors can't see him. So we're as much as he always does. He's choosing to rest out and eating for us. Puspa, on the other, always out and about. She's still checking out what everyone else is doing as they come through the zoo. So it's really, again, these individual personalities. Probably the biggest thing that we've noticed with the orangutans is because orangutans are primates and they are potentially just as much at risk of catching COVID-19 as we can be, we are actually having to practice physical distancing with the orangutans as well, and so they've definitely picked up on that as being a difference in their day. They're used to them a lot of tactile response, and we're trying to make sure that with them as well. So they've definitely picked up on that change, and we're trying to obviously accommodate for that so that they're not missing out on those things. But that's probably one of the biggest difficulties we're having at the moment during this crazy time.
A lot of people have also asked...
They very often, as us keepers are, wrapping up our day, we see them preparing their bed for the night. And then they're often still in bed when we get back here the next morning. So they're kind of very much dusk till dawn sleepers. Occasionally they'll shift spots during the night, but more often than not, they're exactly where we left them when we went home. And then they'll often rest during the day. So it really depends on how physical they've been. If we've given them a lot of mental activity, you know what it's like when you've been at school or you've been at a conference all day and you're using that mental power, you want to rest a bit more. So it really depends, but they do rest a significant amount. And as you can imagine, even in the wild, once they've had their feed for the day or they've moved around looking for food, they'll have a sleep, they make a day nest. This is what they do here at the zoo as well.
All right, so this is going to be our last question. Quite a few people have asked how many are left in the wild.
Very varying numbers. So depending on the different scientific data that comes back, it does vary a little bit. So with the Bornean orangutan, which there is currently thought to be more of, the numbers vary between 20 to 40,000 left. With the Sumatran orangutan, it's believed to be somewhere between maybe 7 to 12,000 of them left. And as I said, with the Tapanuli orangutan, it's about 800. Between those three species, though, we lose many thousands of individuals every single year. So sadly, unless something changes really soon, we're kind of unfortunately looking at about a decade or so of those numbers left in the wild. And with the Bornean orangutan, even though they have the higher number left currently, we actually lose more of them each year. So again, just to circle back to what I was saying before, this is why every time you have a choice to buy something sustainable over an unsustainable item, it really does make a huge impact, whether you're talking about something like palm oil, the hardwoods, all sorts of things. Sustainability is what will help save these beautiful animals. And you know, when you're talking about something that is as charismatic, as intelligent, shares so much DNA with us humans, and on a intellectual, emotional level, so similar to us, if we can do our absolute utmost and our daily choices to help save them, what a better place that will be. So I think that was our last question. So I want to just thank you all for joining us today and tuning in during this little live session. We hope we'll get to see you back at the zoo really soon. But until then, stay tuned to our Instagram and our Facebook pages for all the latest news, all the updates. We'll keep posting as much as we can. Thank you all for joining, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.